Hello and welcome to Mert Live. Today, Peter Rising will be with us and we'll be talking about SharePoint Syntex. Peter, welcome. How are you?
Hello, Mert. I'm well. How are you? You well?
I am fine. Thank you. And to be honest, I have no idea about this topic, so I may ask silly questions. Please forgive me.
No problem. There is
And
no such thing as a silly question.
okay, thank you. So this is my classical question. Can you please introduce yourself?
Of course, yes. So my name is Peter Rising. I am a Microsoft MVP. I live in the northeast of England in the UK, excuse me, with my wife and my two sons. I work as a Microsoft 365 consultant for a company called Softcat here in the UK, working pretty much exclusively with all things Microsoft 365 and focusing mainly on security and compliance and aspects of collaboration such as SharePoint and Teams.
Okay, great. So let's go back to basics. What is SharePoint and how we can use it with Microsoft 365?
So SharePoint in Microsoft 365 is an online intranet platform and document storage, document management system at its core. But it's also so much more than that. It's evolved over many years from its original on-premises forms back in SharePoint 2003. I think it possibly got started, and SharePoint Foundation and all that. But now in the world of Office 365, everything is in the cloud. So a typical use of a SharePoint intranet when one of my customers is wanting to start using SharePoint and wants to understand how it can improve their business, I really suggest two things to them. One is to create a landing page, which will act as their intranet, and that is set up as a communication site. A typical intranet landing page will usually comprise features such as a news feed with internal announcements for that company in their 365 tenant, quick links to handy content, and then all sorts of things. Really, you can have calendars on there and tasks, and apply your branding to it and make it look unique to your company. In addition to that, what you tend to have on there as well is usually an app launcher beneath those sort of things on your landing page, which will take you to individual team sites in SharePoint Online. Now, those team sites, they are slightly different to communication sites, and that they are for well, communication sites are exactly that. They're for communicating information to the user base. Team sites, on the other hand, are for collaborating on documents and spreadsheets and all sorts of other content. So a team site would typically be set up as a department name in a company, something like sales or marketing or purchasing, finance, that sort of thing, and protected with strong permissions, SharePoint permissions groups, or Office 365 Azure groups. So it's a way of modern working. Departments will work on their files within SharePoint, and it's a lot more agile and easier to work on and get to your content wherever you are on any device than it was in the old world, shall we say, with what is now stored on those team sites in SharePoint was more traditionally stored on file servers in S drives for shared drive and things like that. So that's a very sort of basic introduction to what SharePoint is today. There's so much more to it, and as we get into talking about syntax, we'll find that out.
Okay, great. I googled it before the show to learn what is SharePoint syntax is, and I see a name Project Cortex, and I think it's a part of it. So, what is Project Cortex and what is SharePoint syntax?
Okay, well, you're absolutely right. SharePoint Syntex is a part of Project Cortex, and Project Cortex all relates to knowledge management, essentially, and aspects of artificial intelligence, bringing that into SharePoint Online and making content more usable and getting more out of your metadata. So at the moment in Project Cortex, which is a work in progress from Microsoft, there's very little being released from it so far, and there's so much more to come. We can sit and wait with bated breath to find out what is coming with Project Cortex. But at the moment, what we have from Cortex is SharePoint Syntex, which consists of content understanding, and processing, and compliance services that enable you to capture and scale expertise and using advanced AI and machine learning. So what that's doing is it's bringing power of automation to content processing and transforms content that you have in your SharePoint document libraries into useful knowledge. You can extract that content into useful knowledge. So that's Syntex. The other part of Project Cortex that is available or has just been released is of course Microsoft Viva, which has just been recently announced by Microsoft in the last couple of weeks or so, and that is going to bring us employee aspects of knowledge management, things like insights and topics and that sort of thing. So very early days with Viva. I've not had a great deal of chance to play with it just yet, much less so than Syntex. But exciting stuff, and there's going to be more to come. It's only going to evolve and grow and get better and better.
Okay. So you've talked about Viva. Today we are going to talk about Project Cortex. And there are lots of improvements on Microsoft 365 these days. So what do you think about it?
About the various products on Microsoft 365? Yeah, wow. I mean, there are so many products within Microsoft 365 now. I mean, Microsoft 365, probably still more better known as Office 365, has been around probably since, I think it's around 2011. It first started getting off the ground when it was known as BPOS Online. And back then it was really, in the early days, it was basically email in the cloud with Exchange Online and Office applications. But it's come on so much since then. At its core, there are still 5 main core parts of Office 365 or Microsoft 365, whatever you want to call it these days. Microsoft say it's meant to be Microsoft 365, but some of the licenses are still called All 365, so that can get confusing, some of the labeling. But the core, the main core parts to M365 are Exchange Online for your emails, which in the old world of servers and is an evolution of Microsoft Exchange Server, the various versions of that have been in existence over the years from 2000 to 2016 and 2019, and so it's an evolution of that. In addition to that, the second core service would be OneDrive for Business, which is closely tied to SharePoint itself. OneDrive and indeed Teams SharePoint is the backbone for those services, and they are all very closely connected. But OneDrive is the second sort of main component that we talk about in M365, and that is for personal data storage for the individual user in M365. So think of that as a replacement for My Documents, or in business terms, what would used to be the H drive for home drive, or the U drive for the user's drive. That's where OneDrive comes in. Then, of course, we've got SharePoint itself. SharePoint is number 3. That's for your intranet and more collaborative documents, as we've already described, such as the sales and marketing and all that good stuff. And then the fourth one would be Teams. I mean, Teams is the product of the moment, and again, ties closely into SharePoint. When you're working in Teams, if you go into the files, then those files and folders, they have a SharePoint site behind them where all that lives. Teams is an evolution, of course, of many products going back. It's evolved from Skype for Business, before that Link Online, and no doubt something or other before that, which name I can't remember. And the fifth and final one, easy to forget, but it's actually the Office 365 applications, or the full fat programs that we're used to using and have been using for many years, things like Outlook and Word and Excel and PowerPoint, those applications which you can still download and have on your client machines. You can get them in online versions now as well. but most people still do gravitate to those full-fat versions. So they are the 5 sort of core components of 365. So thinking about those, you've already got some great stuff. Then if you look at what else you've got in your, when you log into your Office 365 portal, if you go to portal.office.com as a user and you click on those little dots at the top left-hand corner, the waffle, and see all the applications that you have available to you as part of your subscription, there is a ton of stuff in there that which is amazing. You've got things like Stream for the videos. You've got things like Delve and Sway and Yammer, of course. Yammer is a enterprise social platform which has a niche following, shall we say. And not everyone quite gets Yammer, but it's there, and it will be for some time, and integrates with Teams now. So the possibilities for businesses to adopt a modern way of working with Microsoft 365 are literally boundless, because there are so many different ways that you can apply it to your needs as a business, or even as an individual in the home. It's essentially like having a massive big box of Lego bricks, and I always say to my customers when they're coming to me and talking about, well, we want to do this, we want to do that, and every story is different. Every customer has a different idea of what they're going to get out of it and how they can apply it. But I say, you know, your story is going to be unique. No two organizations are going to build the same thing or use all the bricks. So, and the scary thing is, we're probably only just getting started. When you see what Microsoft are planning now, when you see the evolution and the cadence of Teams in the last 3 or 4 years, it's astonishing how M365 is just, it's taking over the world effectively. And we've got all this good stuff coming with Syntex and Project Cortex, and everything that's wrapped around it with security and compliance. It's amazing stuff. So to answer your question, and a very, very long answer there, it's to me, it's exciting stuff, exciting times, and it's only going to get better and keep on improving, in my opinion.
Before we continue to the next questions, do you have a demo or something to show us?
Yeah, I'm going to try, and what I'd like to try and show you is how to quickly set up SharePoint Syntex within a tenant, which is quite easy to do. And I'd also going to try and walk through something that I've already done on another tenant, which is to set up a document understanding model. Now, you'll have to bear with me a second, because I'm using a different laptop to the one I was planning to use. So if you would just boom, 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 because I couldn't get onto this stream with the one I was planning to use. So if I can just get onto my Yeah, actually, what I'm going to need is this. I'm going to need the credentials to log into this tenant, the demo tenant. So let me just office.com and sign in as, it's been a long time since I logged into that one. And let's just get okay. Can you see that all right, Mert?
Yes, and let's make it full screen.
Okay. Oh, that's bizarre for some reason. This is the beauty of Microsoft 365. It's taken me into my own tenant, despite the fact that I logged in. Let's just do private browser. To apologize, just bear with me a moment. I will do that again. And this time the private browser, hopefully we will have a little bit better luck. Okay. Perils of live demoing, eh? Okay, this time. So the first thing you need to do, if you're planning to use SharePoint Syntex, is you need to actually get the licenses for it. It does require another license, which is, if anyone's interested in cost, and I'm going to give this to you in English currency because that's what I'm working with. But you need to go to the billing section of your Microsoft 365 tenant, and you can get a trial for this as well. But it's £3.80 per licensed user per month to add that on into your environment. So in order to get that going, what you need to do is go into billing and purchase services, and just as that loads, we need to do a search for SharePoint Syntex, or even Syntex will do actually. And there it is. So in this case, on this laptop, this is an American currency this time. So £3.89 in UK currency, $5 per license per month in US dollars. So we've got two different currencies there for the add-on. So we go to details. And what you can do is you can purchase that and or install it as a trial. So I've already installed it as a trial on this tenant here, so it's telling me I own it as a trial. So the next step, once you've got that trial, or you've bought the licenses, is to go into your users who you want to be able to use SharePoint Syntex and assign that license to them. So what we will do is we will go and do this for the user that I am logged into on this tenant, which is the MOD administrator. And we shall assign the SharePoint Syntex license. So if we go to licenses and apps, then we can see here SharePoint Syntex. It's been very generous. It's given us 300 licenses, which is a lot of licenses in our trial. And what we can also do, and then we can save the changes. Now, what's important here as well is if you go into the apps below that, you can see all of the apps that are part of these larger license SKUs above, and we can filter that here by SharePoint Syntex. And it's just important to make sure that all of these are ticked here as well. The common data service for SharePoint Syntex, SharePoint Syntex itself, and the SharePoint Syntex SPO type. So that is setting up Syntex and licensing it. So the next thing we need to do is we need to set up the SharePoint Syntex Center. So in order to do that, I'm just looking at that on my other laptop. Just to remind myself, because that's the one I was going to be working from, but do apologize, I keep on mentioning that. But what we do for that is we also do that from the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, and we go into, on the left-hand rail here, we go into Setup. And then within Setup, we need to scroll down to the Files and Contents section. And we were looking for Automate Content Understanding, and we can see that that has not started yet. So we need to go through and we need to activate this. Okay. So here we have Automate Content Understanding. So this enables us to automatically find, classify, and extract info to automate the processes that we want SharePoint Syntex to do for us. So with this, it enables us, as you can see in the description here, users are able to create AI models to extract metadata. So metadata being data about your data, essentially. So such as the names of people or organizations, getting that data out of the files, and one example that I've done previously when setting up Syntex is you can extract that data and put it into columns in your SharePoint documents libraries to give that very visual information. So what we need to do is we need to go on Get Started. And what we want to do here is select SharePoint libraries to enable for form processing. So we have some choices here where we want to apply that. We can do it by default. It will say libraries in all SharePoint sites, or libraries in selected SharePoint sites, or no SharePoint libraries at all. So we'll just go ahead and we'll do that for all SharePoint sites. Then we have to give our content center a name. This is the content center that is going to be used for Syntex. And I usually call this Syntex Content Center. Okay, and that's going to give it a site name, and this is essentially a SharePoint site, so it's going to have the URL. It'll show you here below what that's going to be. So it's going to be HTTPS, then the name of the tenant, your tenant name, .sharepoint.com/sites/Syntex Content Center. If that's not available, it will tell you, and you'll have to give it another name. But we can go ahead and do that, and then go ahead and activate it. So we'll go off and apply the settings and create our content center. One should not take too long. It should just take a few moments. And then once we're done, we should be able to get into our newly created SharePoint Syntex Content Center. It's just taking a wee while longer than I thought it would. But there we go, we're done. So content understanding is now activated in this tenant. We've completed the setup in order to enable that content understanding. So the next steps we need to do is we need to set permissions for the content center in active sites for the SharePoint Admin Center. So what we can do, click on Done, and that's it activated for us. So we've got our licensing, we've activated the content understanding, and now what we can do is we can go into our newly created Syntex Content Center. Now there are two aspects of content understanding here. There are form processing, and did not realize I was still in Teams, apologies. Form processing, which enables your end users to train a form processing model and apply it to a document library. We're not going to take a look at that one. What we're going to look at is what's called document understanding. So the SharePoint site, this SharePoint site is the default content center for this whole organization. And admins are able to view analytics for form processing and document understanding models. So members of the site are able to build content models, and additional content center sites can be created. So here we go. We're just getting a reminder of our content center name. We can edit it here if we want to, or we can go directly to it by clicking on it. So now we have our new Syntex Content Center all ready to go. So it looks like just any other SharePoint site, really, but there's so much more to it than that. So it's empty right now. There's not much going on there. And any other sort of standard SharePoint site, it looks like, and when you click on new, you can see all the usual things that you would expect in a standard SharePoint site, like lists and document libraries and pages and et cetera, et cetera. But we have this extra one here, which is document understanding model. So before we go into that and try and create one, it's always worth having a look through this tour of how to create a model, which is very, very useful. It really tells you how to get going with it. So let's take a look at that. So if we click on this tour to create your model, it's very, it helps you all along the way. It's absolutely brilliant. So first thing you need to do to create a document understanding model is to add some example files. Now, what it's going to need here is 5 example files of the same type, which are going to be known as positive examples. So An example of that could be 5 documents which are a statement of works, 5 different versions of that, but essentially the same type of document. So, and you need to add at least one of a different type, which is going to be a negative example. So, the odd one out, if you like, essentially. And then from those documents which you upload, you're going to train your model to understand these example files, and you're going to apply what are called trainable classifiers to them. So that's step one, adding your example files. Then we've got step two, which is to actually classify this content type. So you apply training the model on the documents that you've uploaded, your examples, to identify this class of files. So first you need to label the examples you just added, then add an explanation to help identify that type of file. So that's classifying and running the training on your files. Then this is an optional stage, actually. Once you've identified your positive examples of files, the type of files that you want to match against in SharePoint Syntex, you can also do this optional step, which is to extract certain words and phrases or numbers from the documents that this content model is going to apply to. So as per the example I mentioned earlier on, where ultimately the end goal of this is to have a document library with documents in it. And when this content model is applied to it, it will look for documents with certain content in it and label it as such. It will maybe also apply a retention label to that content as well. So we're applying some compliance as well, which is good, which is useful. But this extraction part here gives you some additional options. It enables you to get certain words and phrases or numbers out of the document and have them as additional columns in your document library. Once you've extracted that content, they will display in a very useful way, and you can get access to that information that way. So that is the process of extraction, but that's optional. You don't have to do that, but it's so powerful. I don't see why you wouldn't use it. Then the final step is to classify the new files. So we've got our content understanding model created and ready. It knows, it's been through its training, it knows how to understand the positive examples of documents that we've identified. It knows that the negative ones are ones that it shouldn't label, it shouldn't apply that retention to, and it shouldn't try and extract information from and present them in columns. But we can now apply that model to a chosen document library, and it will go ahead then and it will classify any matching files in that document library. And that is basically SharePoint Syntex document understanding models in a nutshell, and what it does. So that is a very, very handy tour. What we'll do is we'll just see if we can try and do a quick document understanding model, run through it. So to do that, we go to new and document understanding model, and we can give it a name. What we'll do is we'll call this SOW for statement of work, and we will go to create. We don't need to go advanced settings, I don't believe. Yes. No, it's important to point this out though, because when you're creating a new document understanding model, what you can do is SharePoint uses content types. Content types are basically labels for types of metadata. So there are a lot of existing content types already in SharePoint Online, and you can use existing ones. So here you can see some existing content types, such as forms and links to documents and wiki pages and basic pages. So there's a lot built in there that you can already choose from. But you can also create your own new content type as well as part of setting up your document understanding model. Here's the compliance piece that I mentioned earlier as well, that you can optionally apply a retention label to your document understanding model. And what that's going to do is once that model is applied to any content in targeted libraries within SharePoint Online, it's going to apply that retention label to it. So it's going to ensure that that content is retained or deleted in line with organizational internal policies or any industry regulations that your organization is bound by. So highly recommend that that's included in the process. So we can drop down here and we can see some retention labels here. We've got some options to retain the content for 5 years, for 7 years, various different ones, retain for 3. So what we will do is we will, just as an example, we'll select public and retain that content for 5 years. We can then go ahead and create our content understanding model. So now we get to the point where we need to start adding some example files and training. So again, you get a very, very useful little tour here with some instructions on what you need to do next. So just to reiterate that process, we need to select those at least five files of the same category. These could be 5 contracts by a property, 5 letters of intent, 5 monthly product reviews. They should all have patterns or a list of phrases in common. So an example would be, the pattern could be, "Dear Megan, this letter is to inform you," or a similar introduction might be common to this type of file. And as mentioned previously, add one training file that's different. So for example, if you're trying to identify a sales contract, add a request for a proposal file. So while these are both sales types of documents, they have a different language. So with examples of both types, you can explain what's unique about the type that you're trying to identify. So that's an important part of it, actually. When adding a negative example, it's best practice to try and have that negative example to be as close as possible type of document to the one that is your positive example. It doesn't matter entirely, but it can be anything, the negative example, but it's better to try and get it as similar as you possibly can. It's better that way in general. You need to add explanations when classifying, also when extracting as well, if you choose to do that optional extraction of the of content from the document. So here, explain what is unique and apply the model. So what's happening at this point is you're labeling the files as examples or negative examples. Then add at least one explanation and train the classifier. So for example, if, as it's saying here, if the words "this letter is to inform you" or similar show up in every file of this type, add that phrase as an explanation. So now you can apply that model to train an extractor or apply that model to a library. So some very, very handy hints there. So we're going in, we've selected new document understanding model. We've just read through our tips there. We've now got these steps here to go through and add our example files as the first one. As we do each one, the rest of these will become active. They will no longer be grayed out, and we can go through those as well. So let's go ahead and see if we can add some example files. So it's very, very helpful along the way. You get lots of hints. It tells you what to do. Select at least 5 files of the same type. Also select one at least of a different type. So let us just see what we have got. Now, at this point, what I might do is I might just switch gears very, very slightly to my other tenant and show you one I did earlier, because I was going to go through this process and I had 5 example files lined up on my other laptop, which I haven't been able to use for this particular example. So I think that's probably going to work best and give you a better flavor of how it all works. So I'm switching to my other browser. I'm going to go into my own tenant rather than the demo one. And what we want to do is let's just go to the SharePoint Admin Center. Actually, that's probably the best and easiest way to do it. And and get into my SharePoint Syntex Content Center, not easy to say, from here. So, and this is a good example as well of, now this is absolutely crazy. It's actually gone into that, it's gone into that actual demo tenant for some reason. Okay, bear with me 1 second. Let me just see if I can, this is slightly frustrating. Can I go to SharePoint.com? See if it'll let me do it this way. Okay, that didn't work. Click here to sign in with a different account. Okay, just 1 second. Do apologize for this. I'll try and get this figured out. Right, let's see if I can just sign out of this one. And, okay, let's see if it's going to play this time. Oh, it wants to sign me into my work account now. That's the Office 365 logins is not being kind to me here. Okay, that is slightly frustrating. Okay, let's just see if I can. What I can do, if you will bear with me for just a moment, is the files that
Peter,
Yes?
I think you may want to plug in your charger.
Yes, I may well want to do that actually. Yeah, that is a very good point. Just 1 second. Let me just go and grab that in a moment.
Okay.
Just 1 second. Before I do that, I should have a moment just yet. Let's just do a new. Just going to send over these files so I can try and do exactly that. Okay, sending. Right, I've got some files that I'm just transferring over from my other laptop. Let me just see if I can grab my charger. 1 second, I'll be right back. Just in the next room.
Okay.
Okay, this is turning into quite a comedy show. I'm just going to move locations briefly and take the laptop to the charger rather than the charger to the laptop. Let's explain some of the challenges that I have in my house. Is that there are very few places for me to go to work quietly, but such is the way of COVID. So let's find this charger and plug in. Okay, you still with me, Mert?
Yes.
Amazing, amazing. Fantastic. So I'm now in my living room. Hopefully there'll be no more interruptions and I've got good power. So I should also hopefully have some files as well. So let me just download all of those, save all attachments. Okay. So this is going to go to, just put that on the desktop. No, we'll put it on downloads. Okay. Right. So now we're back at this point. Sorry for that brief disruption there. So what we want to do is now add our example files. So we'll click on Add Files. Okay. Oh, I'm still in the tour. Right, exit the tour. Right. Okay. Add files. Try that again. Here we go. So select example files for your model. So what we're going to do is we're going to upload these. We go to the downloads and one. Let's just go date modified. 2, 3, 4, 5. Open those up. So these are uploading now. These are 5 example files that I retrieved from this demo tenant that we are using, and they are all statements of work. So hopefully these should be good examples of positive files. So we need one other negative example. So let's just look for a negative example. So let us just see. Find a particular negative example that would work. That'll do. Marketing handover form. That's completely opposite to the sort of document that we want. So here we go. We have got our documents now. So if we highlight those and click on Add. Right, files are added. Step 1 is complete. This unlocks the next 2 steps in the sequence. We now need to go ahead and train our classifier. So here we go. We're now in the training model. And what we can do here is start to label our files as positive or negative examples. So we've got 6 files in here. 6 are going to be positive, and 1's going to be negative. So it's going to ask us on each one, is this an example of a scope of works? So we're going to say yes. And then it's going to move to the next one. In doing so, you will see that it's going to label this as positive. Next question, is this an example? Yes, it is. Marketing handover form. This is certainly not an example of a scope of work, so we're going to label that as our one negative example. Again, as I can't point out strongly enough, that's a very, very random negative example. It's best to try and have an example which is as close as possible to the type of your positive example. So just go through the rest of them. We'll say yes, and yes, and there we go. That is that. One more to go, in fact. Okay. And scope of works, yes. Oh, right, okay. So now we've labeled them. We've got 5 positive examples, 1 negative example, as you can see. Now that we've done that, we need to move to our training phase. Click on the training tab here. This is where we need to add an explanation as part of this process. So just for the sake of demonstrating, I'll just call it explain. And here you can choose between a phrase list or a pattern list. We'll just go for a simple phrase list here. What you can do as well, this works well in the extractor part of things. If you want to extract information and put it in the library, you can use pattern lists. I'll just show you quickly what that looks like. So you can add in things like date formats and credit cards and that sort of thing, but we don't really need to do that here. So we'll just use a simple phrase list on this occasion and match to that. So let's have a look. What we need to do here is we need to identify phrases from this template. So what we can do is we can select statement of work, and we can copy that and paste that in there. And then that should be enough. I mean, what you can do is, if once you've tested this in your training, you can put additional matching phrases in if you don't get a positive match. So you can select only exact capitalization and then decide where these phrases occur. So you can choose between anywhere in the file, the beginning, the end, or a custom range. So this one, I think, is probably going to be prudent for us to focus on this statement of work at the beginning of the file. So we'll do that. Yeah, and that's highlighted there, which is good. Okay, so we will save that. Now it starts an evaluation process of the files, and it will go through, and what we're looking for is for this to say match, which we've got, which is excellent. Now, if you have a mismatch here, then you have a problem. So that's what you don't want to see. If you have a mismatch, you need to go back and redo the training, add some additional phrases that it can look for in the document to identify them. Okay, so now we just need to go through each of these and answer the question. Well, just review if this is all correct. Correctly predicted as a positive example is number 1. The same for number 2, which is good. Number 3 again. Number 4, also a statement of works. This one is correctly predicted as a negative example. That is our marketing handover form that we put in. So that's doing exactly what we wanted to do, which is absolutely fantastic. So that is absolutely brilliant. So we've got our training criteria in, and we can now just click on train model. And there we go. Great job. All predictions match your labels. You can now either exit the training or you can go on to test. So what you can do here is you can go on and do some further testing, add in some more positive examples if you feel you need to, and do a bit more. But we'll not do that here. We'll exit the training, and what we've done here is we've got our good examples that we wanted to add. Now what we can do here, let's see if we can do this. I don't know if this will work terribly well because I'm not too familiar with these documents. Is we could try and extract some content from that document, and let's try it. Create and train an extractor. So we will call this extractor scoping docs, for lack of a better name. So what it's going to do here is it's going to I'd look for content in our positive examples that we've now identified, and it's going to try and extract the content that we identify and place it in a column within the SharePoint library that we apply this to. So, or you can use an existing column if you want to as well. So we'll go ahead and we'll create a new column. You can choose what type of column data that you want based on what you're trying to extract. So if it's a date and time, you would put date and time. I'm not sure if we have any. Let's have a look at that. Let's try that. In fact, let's go date and time as our column type, and let's see if any of these documents here have any dates in them. I'm not sure that they will, but yeah, there are some dates in there. So what what we can potentially try and do is we can do this as a as the type of content that we want to extract. So if we go, so we highlight that there, and go next layer, next file, we should, I'm thinking, find that same at the bottom there and go next file. So we don't want anything in this one. So we want no label in that one. Next file. And same again. And this one seems to be a little bit different in that it doesn't have a date in it, but never mind. I will just skip that one and hope for the best. And the final one, let's save that. Okay, so let's try and train. Add an explanation. So this time we're going to extract dates columns, and we'll try the pattern list this time, and we'll go for dates numeric, or was it actually, it wasn't numeric, was it? It was this type of date, wasn't it? We'll add this in and see if that works. This pattern occurs towards the end of the file in this case. So there we go, it's identifying it there. So we'll save that and let us see what it does. It's evaluating now, it's training, and we've got a match, which is good, So of our files, we've got labeled. We've got a match on that one, and no label on that marketing handover form, which is good. So this may or may not work, but let's see what happens. So we can now go in and exit our training, and we've got our extractor completed. So that is our document understanding model done now. So what we now need to do is apply this model to a document library within SharePoint Online. So let's go ahead and do that. We will go and find a document library that we will upload our files to, and I shall just go into SharePoint Online. And sites, active sites. And let's just pick on this global sales site, for example. Let's go into the sites. And we'll go into the document library for the site, which well, there we go. Couldn't see the cogwheel for looking. So site contents. And we'll go into documents, and let's just create a new folder here. We'll call it SOWs and create. So what we'll do now is we will upload our files that we had before into here. So they are uploading. I shall also upload that negative example as well. Which was the marketing. It's here somewhere. Let me just. So there we go. Fantastic. We've got our library. We've got our positive examples in there. We've got one negative example in there. We can add others in. But you can see that this is a standard SharePoint document library. It's just got the standard columns, name, modified, modified by, no more columns. What we're going to try and do here is apply our model that we've created here to that library now. Let's see if that is, it's going to show us here that we have a recent site, so we can go to that site and documents, and we can add our model to documents. So let's go ahead and do that. And we'll publish that model to our library. Now we can go to our library, go back into it, and into our scope of works. You can see we have got some new content here now. Our document model, understanding model, has been applied. We've got extra columns under content type now. Everything is currently a document, and there's no content in here just yet. So we have to go ahead and apply our model to it. So we can select one file here as an example, and we can go ahead and classify and extract. So it adds that in. And we may have to just do a quick refresh. Let's just try that. It can take a bit of time to catch up. What we'll do is we'll do it for the whole of these. Classify and extract. Oh, we've got one good example there now. So awesome, fantastic. So what we are seeing here is that our scope of work has been correctly identified as the content type scope of work. And it was done on this date by our content understanding model, which is called scoping docs. We wanted to apply some compliance to our files that were protected by this document understanding model. So we added a retention label to that document understanding model, which was the public retention label, which will retain that content for 5 years. It's giving us a confidence score here that this is a positive match, 99.3434, which is good enough for me. If we do another refresh, we will hopefully very shortly find that more start catching up. But we should find that this marketing one, which is our negative example, is not going to be, there we go, we're getting more now. And over the next couple of minutes, all of the positive examples should match and get this lovely extracted data here and content types. Whereas our marketing form remains as a document and has no labeling in that row. So that, my friend, is SharePoint Syntex and document understanding models in a nutshell. And I hope you found it useful and informative. I do apologize for the disruptions. I'll bet you've never had a presentation where somebody started out sitting on his bathroom floor and then had to move to his living room. So I'm here to entertain you, though.
Okay, thank you. So I wonder how does Protect Cortex protect the security and compliance of the content?
Say that again, sorry, Matt.
So what about the security and the compliance of the content we upload
right.
to SharePoint?
I'm with you. Well, that's what the retention labels are doing. The retention label that we applied at the moment in the context of SharePoint Syntex, that's the only real bit of compliance that you can apply there. The document library that is set up for Syntex as well, that has SharePoint strong permissions baked into there as well. So it's all secure and good to go from that point of view. But the important part to apply compliance is that retention label, which I highly suggest that you do. Retention is hugely important for any organization to consider. It's important to not over retain documents and delete them when needed, but it's also important to retain the correct stuff, and that's going to depend largely on internal policies and any industry regulations that each individual organization is bound by.
Okay, so I have no experience in licensing,
Hmm.
but I want to ask about the pricing. But you show some price is $5, but I
Correct.
wonder if is it same with all licensing stuff. For example, I think your license is E3,
Yes.
and is it the same in E5 or is it included in that licensing?
No, it's a standalone license, so it's an add-on license which can be added to any of those other SKUs to
Okay,
E3 to E5. So you have to go out and get that separately. It's an interesting decision from Microsoft to have it as an additional license. I'm a bit surprised in some ways that they've chosen to do that, and that is also the case for Viva Topics, which is the first part of Viva that has been released that you can purchase or get a trial for. I think that's going to be key to getting people adopting this. I think people might think, oh, well, these are really great features, but do I really want to pay more for these for the privilege of using them? So it'll be interesting to see how adoption goes. It's very early days. I think it's excellent, excellent technology, very beneficial, very useful, a lot of use cases, but will people want to spend the money? People are already feeling perhaps a little bit of, oh, well, I need to spend extra bits of money on licensing if I want additional Azure AD premium features, such as privileged identity management or identity protection, things like that, or automatic labeling for sensitivity labels, should I say, and policies. So it's yet another license that if you want to use this functionality, you've got to get your hand in your pocket. So we shall see how it takes off. I expect it will, for the most part, but a lot of people might be put off by that extra burden of extra cost again.
okay. Before we finish, are there anything you want to add?
No, not really, other than to say thank you so much for your time,
You're
Mert,
welcome.
and for inviting me. I really appreciate it. I can only apologize again for
Okay.
the craziness of the
No
of,
worries.
of the broadcast, but we got there in the end. Thank you for your patience. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope anyone watching has found it useful and also probably very amusing. Such is the craziness of my life. But if anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm always happy to talk to anyone in the community. You can reach me at M365 Rising on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn as well. I blog quite a bit. You can find me on the tech community forums as well quite a bit. I do quite a bit of speaking, so I'm not hard to find. If you want to talk to me, I'm always happy to talk. And to the great members of the community, and including yourself. So thank you, Mert, for doing this. It's great. I've watched so many of your other sessions. You've had so many great people
Thank
on.
you.
Keep up what you're doing. It's marvelous. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So thank you very much for joining me today, and I think this was a very fantastic session
Thank
for
you.
both of us.
Yes,
And hope to see you again in further episodes.
it would be my pleasure. I will happily come back, and hopefully it'll be a little less crazy and disjointed next time.
Okay, thank you
At
very
least I
much.
know the
Cheers.
platform this time. At least I'm used to this StreamYard that
Okay.
we're using, so I will know what I'm doing next time and be a bit more organized. So, thank you again, Mert. Take care of yourself.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye bye.